Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the content patch for the 12th of December 2013. My name is TotalBiscuit with today's gaming news and comments. Coming up in the show, we'll be focusing entirely on the YouTube copyright blitz, as some are calling it, which has focused on gameplay content on YouTube. All this in the OC Remix track of the day is coming your way right about now. It has begun. It's been rumored for probably over 6 months now, but it has now finally started to happen. Gaming channels across YouTube have been subject to a wide variety of copyright claims. Please bear in mind this is not the same as copyright strikes. These are automated content ID claims, which involve matching content to a database of footage supposedly owned by other companies. This has for the most part focused on AAA games, including those that are cutscene heavy, since matching cutscenes is very easy to do within the Content ID system. However, it has also hit videos featuring trailer footage and in some cases even in-game music. This has resulted in many videos losing their monetized status, although it has not resulted in those videos being removed from YouTube or actual copyright strikes being put in place. The possible effects of a content match include removing the video from YouTube entirely, taking the monetization rights to the video, meaning that ads will be run and the money sent to the company that supposedly owns the footage rather than the person that made the video, or simply enabling a tracking system which allows information to be gathered by the holder of the actual copyright themselves, and I use that term very loosely considering the situation. This has resulted, of course, in an absolute uproar, which is all over the damn place, and it was recently confirmed by YouTube that these are only affecting affiliate channels, a recent distinction between channels which are managed by the network, and as such they take responsibility for copyright issues for said channel, and all of the other channels which, well, don't. It's really as simple as that, and this is a new system that was supposed to be coming into play in January, however appears to have kicked in somewhat early, and has coincided with this large copyright sweep. So, this is going to be a tricky one to break down, so let me explain exactly what was happening prior to all of these changes. If you were an unnetworked partner on YouTube, then every now and again you would be subject to monetization review, which means that a video you're trying to put up would be subject to a review which could take anywhere between hours to several days in order to allow you to place ads on it to make some money. The point of the system is to prevent or at least reduce the number of videos that are being put up which don't actually belong to the person in question, and yet they're making money off it regardless. Also bear in mind, YouTube is making money off it regardless, so there's some liability for them there as well. Now, this system only used to affect those that were not partnered with a network. The reason why people would partner with a network is to avoid this and to get a blanket monetization permission through the network's content management system. This is something that was supposed to then be the responsibility of the network. They were supposed to police their own partners and keep an eye on it to make sure that there wasn't any copyright infringement going on. That became their responsibility. However, somewhere down the line, it appears that YouTube decided that the networks weren't doing a particularly good job of that and decided to change the system. They created two categories of network partners, affiliates and managed. Affiliates are basically in the same situation as they would be if they weren't with a network. They are subject to monetization review, and they also appear to be subject to a large number of copyright content ID matches. Managed partners, on the other hand, have not been affected by this copyright sweep, and the network takes responsibility for their copyright issues. That means that any strike against the channels could also affect the network directly, up to and including severe consequences like the entire network being shut down. This means that networks were left to decide who they believed should be managed partners within their network, basically who they were willing to assume risk for, and who would be essentially downgraded to affiliates, which means that they do not take responsibility for that kind of stuff, and they are also subject to this monetization review from time to time. I have not heard of a single instance of a managed partner, myself included, being hit by any of these copyright notices whatsoever. I have received no notices of any kind. Now, I am very careful with my footage, but there are other channels that are also very careful with their footage that did receive matches regardless, so I don't believe this really has too much to do with it. So, let's talk about Content ID, and then let's go into the subject of the monetization of game footage in general. Content ID is a system that I suppose to some degree has to exist, and yet has so little human oversight that it has massive consequences and is very easily abused. We've seen this in this recent copyright blitz, with a lot of confusion coming from channels, saying, well, why was this claimed? A great example would be Blizzard material. Now, various high-profile channels actually got some Hearthstone videos tagged, which is very confusing to me, because, well, one, that would be very difficult to do. I assume they did that on the basis of music, maybe. That was the easiest thing to match. Matching gameplay? Nigh on impossible, yeah? You've got to match video to video. It just compares elements of one video to another video. You can't really match raw gameplay, but you can match static content, like a cutscene or a piece of music, so I imagine that's how it worked. Regardless, Blizzard has a post on its website, and has for a very long time, alongside many other companies, including Valve and Riot, that yes, you are actually allowed to monetize the footage. The only caveat to that, aside from the usual kind of rules, like you can't use this to promote, say, porn sites or whatever, is that you can't charge for it. So it's got to be freely available. Aside from that, you can use whatever the hell you want. Now, Blizzard was really confused by this and actually put out tweets on the StarCraft Twitter, the Diablo, and Hearthstone saying, yeah, we have no idea what this is going on. We need to get this sorted out, and please do counterclaim it. We'll get it all whitelisted as soon as we can. And they're not the only company either. Capcom Unity was the same, Ubisoft was the same, and I can't imagine how many publishers actually had no intention of using this content ID system against partners, and yet it seems like YouTube has done it unilaterally. Now, yes, some of these companies will have had their content registered under the Content ID system. The reason they do that is to stop other companies from basically stealing it. It's protecting trademarks, it's protecting copyright, but they don't enforce it. They don't need to. It's just kind of there as a backup, just in case something goes horribly wrong. There are some companies that did decide to enforce it, most notably Nintendo, who got an incredibly bad rap for doing that. But for the most part, it really seems like this is a YouTube thing, and a lot of these publishers do not want this to happen. But let's not pretend that all the publishers are on the good side of this. They most assuredly are not. A lot of this video could probably end up repeating everything I said during the Nintendo debacle a long time ago. Remember, the 17th of May. I wasn't much of a rapper. Regardless, back in May of this year, I pointed out that Nintendo was shooting themselves in the foot by restricting monetization on Let's Play and things like that. I also pointed out that the scattershot approach was going to catch legitimate content. That's not to say, by the way, that Let's Plays are not legitimate content, but even more legitimate content, like journalistic content, review content. It would be caught in the crossfire. And guess what happened? Oh look, we just saw that happen across the board, so I'm kind of a prophet of misery, I'm sorry. I would love to prophesize good things, but this is cynicalbrit.com. So let's focus on the notion of the publisher, and let's talk through both sides as we generally do here. Is it right for the publisher to try and restrict monetization of gaming footage from a product that they own? You're going to try and make comparisons now, aren't you? And I'm going to sigh, and I'm going to say I've heard them 100 times before. Can I just say that making comparisons is basically pointless when it comes to games footage? Really, the closest that you can actually get is with cutscenes and music. You can compare the two, especially if the music happens to be something that's licensed from, say, GTA 5. That's a big risk. You're using licensed music in a way that permission has not been given for. If you upload music to YouTube that you don't own, then that can happen to you. That's kind of accepted. Cutscenes, almost the same, really. You can compare a cutscene maybe to a clip from a movie or a television show, but a lengthy one, and you can say, well, yeah, you don't really have the right to monetize that. But, and here's the but, this is not just happening in a vacuum. It's not just the case someone uploading a cutscene and monetizing it and saying, hey, let me make money off someone else's work. That's not how it's operating. The cutscene is part of the overall interactive experience. It is required to contextualize what is going on in the rest of the game. And the music, of course, is what happens to be running in the background. Admittedly, if you have any licensed music in your game, I would strongly suggest, if you're making a video of it, you turn it off. There's actually a reason that when I played Saints Row 3 and 4 for WTF Is, I turned to the classical music channel, because any of the other tracks had the potential of causing copyright problems. In the case of dealing with this kind of thing, folks, diligence is the better part of valor and certainly the better part of common sense here. Be careful. But here's the thing. We're looking at gameplay. We can talk about cutscenes, we can talk about music, we can talk about trailers, and I've said it time and again, how absurd a notion is it that you put trailers out there, and in fact, in many instances, you send them to outlets. You actually send them the trailer footage and be real. It's like, here, show this on your site, and yet when they try and use it as part of a legitimate piece of work, they get flagged for copyright. I've said time and again that this is ridiculous, and we have suffered from it in the past with the Co-optional podcast. We've had several episodes content ID matched for trailers used by Nintendo. Like, a minute of Pokemon trailer was apparently enough to deny the revenue of a 3-hour show, which boggles my mind. It's like, what right does Nintendo have to the other 2 hours, 59 minutes of this content? They don't in any way, not to mention the obvious fair use implications of everything. No, we always keep going back to fair use, but unfortunately it is a doctrine and not a law that is set in stone, and it is very situational. But talk about the interactive nature of games, because that's the bit that really matters. You can make as many BS comparisons as you please, but the fact of the matter is that gameplay is transformative. The way that I play a game is completely different to the way that everybody else plays the game. This is especially true in multiplayer games, which is why I would strongly recommend making videos of multiplayer games, because generally you have a much stronger leg to stand on there. But it is going to be transformative regardless, because everybody plays differently. The cutscenes, no, yeah? They're clearly the work of the game developer. You had nothing to do with them. They've got a bit of a case there. But the problem is that they're kind of required as part of the gameplay experience. If you're going to make videos about the game, you're probably going to end up showing a cutscene. It might even happen in a piece of journalistic work. In fact, it more often than not does. The quality of the voice acting, the way the cutscenes are actually constructed, is a very, very relevant critical point of any game. We are in the unknown at this point. Previous copyright laws are too old, they're too archaic, and they don't apply to advances in technology. They need to be overhauled as a whole. You might think the Digital Millennium Copyright Act is enough to cover all of this. It is not. It does not understand. It is outdated, and it doesn't get what games actually are. We need a brand new set of copyright laws for gaming footage. But since we're not going to have that for quite some time, it comes down to a bit of quid pro quo. It comes down to a bit of common sense. The publishers have to understand the value of this footage. The publishers have to understand there is very clearly an audience for this, and that audience is not going to disappear if they decide to bring down their mighty iron boot. This is out of their control now. People want to watch other people play video games. That is not going to disappear. If you stop people watching GTA 5, or if you stop people watching, perhaps more importantly, something like Super Mario Galaxy or Zelda or anything along those lines, since Nintendo has clearly stated that they do not want people monetizing that, then they're going to go elsewhere. And that only hurts the publisher. Arguments can be made that some people would rather watch a game than play it, but even if there is no means to do that, they probably just won't play it to begin with. If they clearly were not enthused enough in the product to buy it and play it, or even say pirate it and play it, then you've done something wrong as a game developer, or you've done something wrong as a publisher when it comes to marketing your game. I've got to ask the question, why on earth would anyone desire to watch a game played rather than actually play it themselves? Well, there are many reasons behind that. And it also supports my transformative argument. The first reason is that they're watching for the personality and not the game, and this is the primo reason. This is the one right at the top. And the reason it's right at the top is because you can prove time and again that people don't come for the game, they come for the person playing it. That is a fact. It doesn't matter what game they're playing. In fact, I would cite PewDiePie as the most successful example of anybody when it comes to that idea. He could play anything. Absolutely anything. It does not matter. Play Cleverbot, for God's sake, as insipid a piece of content as that is. That proves beyond the shadow of a doubt that people are coming for the personality and not coming for the game. The game is the stage upon which people make their silly screechy videos, or indeed anything else. The game is not the feature here. When it is the feature, it's more often than not part of a very legitimate piece of content that, of course, we like to call the critique and the review. People come to say, watch my Assassin's Creed video. They will do so because they want to learn about the game. And yes, that'll probably get more views than an indie game, but not by much. Let me do some comparisons here. Once again, we're going to try and debunk the notion that it is vitally important that we as YouTube personalities must cover these AAA titles, because it's not. Let's do a comparison, shall we? So, Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. I put that video out 11 days ago, 12 days ago. 289,000 views. Big game. Very big game. One of the biggest games of the year. Highly promoted. Elder Sign Omens. A tiny dice game converted over from iPad. 204,000 views. Not a big difference there, is there? No, actually not at all. Adventure Park. 277,000 views. I'm sorry, but a really, really bad theme park clone from some random German company got almost as many views as Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. How is this happening? It's happening because they're not tuning in for the game. The game is the stage. It is required in order for the content to be created, but we could just switch to another stage, and we will. And this is the big point that I must make to any publisher that thinks it's a good idea to try and prevent footage of their game from being monetized. We will go elsewhere. You expect this entire industry to just shut down overnight? That's not gonna happen. It's here. It's here to stay. You even understand that it's here to stay because you do things like put streaming capability into the next-gen consoles. It's obvious people want to watch this stuff. So if you don't let people watch your stuff, they're gonna go watch someone else's. What a happy time it must be to be an indie developer. How wonderful is that? If this keeps on happening, then all that's gonna happen is that these channels are gonna switch to games that don't pull this crap, to publishers that don't try and control this kind of media. And then as a publisher, where will you be? I have to ask you that. Where will you be? Because there is a proven link between the purchase of games and the consumption of Let's Play. That is there. I mean, not even to mention the idea of the link between critique and review and, of course, the purchase of games, but that's common sense. This is just another way of doing the same thing we've been doing for decades now. My videos are just a different interpretation of critique. They're just a different way of doing it. I just like to show long sections of the game because I feel that's the most honest way to do it. But the system doesn't discriminate between my videos and Let's Plays. It doesn't discriminate between proper review content and Let's Play. It doesn't care. It just sees something that it thinks it owns and then it flags it without hesitation. And the main problem is that, yes, you can counterclaim it, but it takes a long time. And during that time, that video is either down or unmonetized. That affects paying the rent. That affects the day-to-day. That is something that a lot of partners cannot afford. As much as you might like to think or imagine that so many YouTube partners are literally living in castles full of gold, that is not true. A lot of us make very good money, but we are the tiny minority in comparison to an infinitely larger number of partners that don't, that are living paycheck to paycheck, just trying to pursue their dream. And it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool that YouTube allows for that, but my God, they seem to have taken a great deal of strides towards the exact opposite of that particular principle. It's very sad to see the democratization of video content and the ability to compete with the major television networks simply from the comfort of your own bedroom slowly eroded by the very company that should be defending that to the hilt because it's the foundation upon which their business was built. The fact that networks have been forced to differentiate between their partners is a massive spark for conflict. Huge. Because you've got affiliates who are feeling either jealous or resentful of the managed partners, or of course of the network. You've got contract disputes now resulting from this because there are many partners that actually believe the situation has changed enough for them to leave their contract, and frankly, they've got a pretty good basis for that argument. You've got fights going on all over the internet. You just have all this negativity that has come down simply because a set of changes have come into place that were, in my opinion, horribly mismanaged, horribly explained, and horribly implemented, which is YouTube in a nutshell these days, I'm afraid. I do believe this content ID thing for the most part will eventually blow over. A lot of this stuff is false. A lot of it was done without the consent of the actual content owner, quote unquote, and it's getting resolved. There's a lot of scamming going on as well, people claiming content that isn't theirs, huge amounts of that. That needs to be cracked down on, and that's something that YouTube should be coming down on really hard, because unlike the whole piracy argument and the idea of lost revenue, this is actually provable lost revenue. Right there, that's videos that are not generating revenue for the person that created them. That can have serious consequences. That is the kind of stuff that needs sorting out immediately. What's the solution, you might ask? The solution is this. We don't have a set of laws that adequately covers these situations. That means that we've actually got to get our heads together and talk this out. It's really as simple as that. Content creators and publishers are not enemies. They are synergistic to each other. One benefits the other. One relies upon the other. It is a ludicrous notion that we should be in conflict. Absolutely not. We're the guys making content that supports your game directly, and you're the guys making the games that allow us to produce the content in the first place. We should be friends. There is a huge and vibrant ecosystem of content that has sprung up around video games that is beneficial to everybody, even if some publishers don't really see it that way. Some publishers see it as a danger. I get that. Me, for instance, I have a lot of power, a lot of influence. If I slam a game, it's probably gonna sell less. But if I don't mention it at all, it's gonna sell even less than that. One way or the other, you're getting a lot of eyeballs on your product, and more to the point, you don't have the right to censor that kind of critique anyway, so there's no point in even trying. You'll just cause yourself a hell of a lot more headaches, and yes, some of us are willing to fight that tooth and nail. But this does not mean, of course, that YouTube partners are blameless either. If a company has a wish and expresses it publicly, you have to respect that. And also, can I just point out that an awful lot of these partners jump on the latest and greatest games on day one simply to make money. That is a fact. There are so many day one monetized LPs of games that they have never played before, obviously have no experience in, and are incapable of actually making a competent video of because they've never played it. These are people that are looking towards profit over anything else. Now, I understand that the audience wants to see the latest and greatest. I really, really do. But what I'm asking for from content creators is a bit of respect for the medium. It's a bit of respect for the idea that, yes, a large team of people spent a lot of time and an awful lot of money making this game, in the case of AAAs. That does not mean you can't criticize it. You absolutely should. Again, vital to the ecosystem of gaming that constructive criticism is used. Consumers must be informed. They are the ones at the greatest risk of being exploited. We must protect them. We have the responsibility to protect them. We have the platform to make that happen. But please just try and be reasonable when it comes to using content that was created by someone else, even if your work is transformative. You know, play ball, be reasonable, don't push it. The better you are at your job and the more time and effort you actually put into your videos, the more respect they will garner from this industry. Because right now I can guarantee there's a bunch of publishers that just see your average Let's Play and say, look at this guy, he's not doing anything. He's blabbering into his crappy microphone, he's talking over these voice actors that we paid a bunch of money to actually do their jobs properly. He's basically ruining our game and making money from it. That's what they see. You've got to change that perception. And you can do that by upping the quality of your content in general. It is not the case for everybody. There are a great deal of very good Let's Plays out there. Most of them start on the SA forums, but there are a great deal of good LPs. The problem is there's a hell of a lot more bad ones. And the better this content is, the more respect it will garner within the industry. Lately, I'm feeling like an awful lot of content creators and publishers are on either side of this really big wall. Yeah? It's soundproof. We can't hear what the other guys are saying on the other side of the wall, but we can chuck bricks and Molotov cocktails. And that's happening. That's all that's happening. We're standing on either side of this wall, we're not communicating, we're tossing projectiles at each other, and that's it. Why? This is something that can actually be solved without even getting the law involved in any way. We don't need legislation for this, as nice as it would be. We just need to talk it out. We need to come to a reasonable compromise. And no, you can make videos of our games but not make any money from it is not a reasonable compromise. The good news? Publishers are already looking into just that. We have had developer after developer over the last couple of days come out publicly and say, we are totally okay with you monetizing our content, go for it. It is becoming the PR-friendly thing to say. This entire debacle is shining a light into what otherwise was a very grey and murky place, and it needed shining. We needed clarity. It has shown that the content ID system is massively flawed. It has shown that YouTube needs to get its goddamn act together. And you know what? It's shown that actually some publishers are more than willing to be reasonable. Perhaps we'll come out of this with a win. Perhaps things will get better. Oh yeah, cynicalbrit.com. Somehow I doubt it. Alright folks, that is me done for the day. Thank you very much for watching the content patch, but before I go, I'd like to give you the OC remix track of the day. Just something else that wouldn't be possible if copyright law didn't actually allow for this kind of stuff. And think about the creativity that would be stifled if that were the case. I'll be honest, I don't know if I've played this one before. I get mixed up with all of the great Deus Ex remixes that I like to play, but hey, it's a great track. I'm gonna play it regardless, even if I have done so in the past. This is from an album by the name of Deus Ex Sonic Augmentation. It's very appropriate because the reason this album exists is because a publisher and content creators got together to make something awesome. This is a prime example of what happens when you use a little common sense and work together towards the common good in this particular industry. This is a fantastic track by Alexander Brandon and Jimmy Hinson. It is a remix of the Declare Chateau and main title theme from Deus Ex, and it is called Ma Chérie Nicolette. I'll see you next time.